This week's real estate and mortgage rate update, and as I'd mentioned in last week's update, the remaining part of last week was huge economic news releases on tap that would be big market movers. And in fact, we did see big moves in the market. Mortgage rates have definitely improved. And if we can continue this momentum, we can certainly see some meaningful improvements going forward. So let's jump into the data here. We've been hovering in the high sixes for quite some time now. 30-year fixed rate as of today, national average 6.57. So definitely moving in the right direction with a fairly big step in that right direction. So that's really, really encouraging. And then if we take a look at how that plays out from the mortgage-backed securities, you can see, as I've mentioned in the past, each of these days represents a day of trading. So you can see on Friday, massive movement in the right direction. Green and up is good for rates. Red and down is bad for rates. So if we can continue this momentum, you can see there's upward room here, even to reach this 102.09, kind of this ceiling, if you will, that may provide some resistance outside of any economic news that would push us through this. However, this is great territory to be in to continue to see improvement in those mortgage rates. And here's the couple key reasons why. So first of all, on Thursday, the PCE was released. And PCE is personal consumption expenditures, which is kind of the Fed's favored measure of inflation. And everything was kind of in line with expectations. So when we see no surprises, then that often plays well into the market, and we don't see these knee-jerk reactions. And so headline and core inflation numbers were as expected, went up 0.3 month over month, but the annual stayed the same at 2.8. So that's this figure here. So that was good news, and that helped kind of create some stability in the marketplace. But this was the big one. So the jobs report came out, and not only did we have a very low figure, but we had May and June revisions of negative 258,000 jobs. And so you may have heard that Trump fired the president of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And a lot of people, are saying it was a political move because he didn't like that there was only 73,000 jobs created, or that's what the report was. But the reality is for a handful of years now, there has been a lot of inaccuracies in the monthly jobs reports with significant revisions the month later. What is important about this is that the market responds to the releases. They don't respond to the revisions 1 and 2 months later. And so what we've seen both in May and June, for example, when these job reports came out, surprised the market with these job creations, we saw mortgage rates spike. But then these May and June revisions that hit in July, showing actually the numbers were only $258,000 less than what they had released, the market doesn't really necessarily respond to that. And so people in May and June, they're likely to have higher mortgage rates than what reality would have been. And so that's super discouraging. And if you look back at just 2024, for example, the BLS reported 2.5 million new jobs created in 2024. But when that figure was audited, they came out with only 1.2 million actual jobs created. That's a miss by 1.3 million jobs. And so what is being said is that the data collection methods are old, outdated, and they're not providing accurate information. So unfortunately, the market is responding to this inaccurate information. And as a result, it's really negatively impacting the overall marketplace. And so there's hope that with this move, that they'll start to revise the way in which they gather this data, providing more transparency and more accuracy as it pertains to the jobs report data. So if we can continue to see, more accuracy in these job reports. There's definitely been a softening in the job market. Unemployment went up. And so that's why we saw that big move on Friday. And as that carries over, we may be able to continue some of this good momentum in mortgage rates. So stay tuned for next week's update. Thanks so much.